Hi, I'm Scott, and I'm an LA Fish Guy. Welcome back to the new, shorter, multi-part version of LA Fish Guys.
So it's the following morning, having just set up the two 300-gallon saltwater making containers and the reverse osmosis deionization water purification system. You can see we produced about 60 gallons of water. Unfortunately, it was in the wrong container, meaning the container it was in was leaking water. I had to drain it and pump it over to the other container. So as it turns out, apparently I have termites in the board that sits underneath the water container, and whether as a result of the cleaning of the bottom of the container that broke the hole through, or just coincidence last night, that water began to leak out of the container. So I've had to remove it out of this board area and take it out to the driveway so I could find out where the hole was and patch it. So I'll start first by complimenting Scott for the suggestion of putting all the union fittings inside the pipe, because that made disassembling the plumbing quite easy. The second thing I wanted to comment about was me and Scott were kind of going at each other in regards to this flexible tubing in here, and I kind of reluctantly said, okay, let's put it up here, and I pass it off as earthquake preparedness. But as it turns out, that allowed me to swivel that pipe there from the discharge of the water pump, so that this morning I was able to pull out that container all by myself. So in regards to the container, we had to determine where the leak was, and what that required was I ended up putting it on top of the cart over here, and then I put in a little bit of water to see where it was coming from, and as it turns out, was coming right from there, and you can probably see what's left of the hole. I've kind of patched it now. Now, about 3-4 years ago, I had a similar issue where basically I ended up with water leaking out. Turned out to be the result of a tiny little hole, and as it turns out, both of these holes tend to correspond with holes in the plywood. And so I got a funny feeling that if you look close here, you can see the tiny little fine shavings, which are usually the telltale signs of termite turds or something like that. Anyhow, the board is fine. What I've done is dried it out. I've filled all those little boring holes with silicone, and then having found where the leak was over here, not only did I apply some silicone up there on the inside, that way pushing it through, because this is the water in the container is going to be exiting the container from the inside going out. So if I start with my silicone, which was pliable when I applied it, push it into the little hole from the inside, in the future any water pressure is just going to keep pushing that further in and making it less of a chance of leakage. And then I also took and applied some silicone out here as well.
After allowing the patch to dry on a hot Sunday afternoon for a number of hours, I can place the container back onto the flat cart and roll it back over next to its spot, and with a hee-ho, lift it up into position. Once again, those union fittings Scott suggested have come in really handy, and it's almost a breeze reassembling the plumbing and various fittings.
And so while I really didn't relish the thought of having to disassemble all this on a hot Sunday morning when the humidity's way up, there are some silver linings. Yesterday we had mounted the solenoid valves as well as the power strips here on the wall. Turns out they're directly over a power outlet. So this gives me a chance to move all of this over about 6 inches so that if there is any leakage here of water, it doesn't end up directly onto the power itself. And now what I need to do is cut a new piece of tubing to span between these 2 points here. That'll be the water coming out of the solenoid going into the container, and then hook back up the two float switches. And I made it a point to mark which one was the top, so I'm okay there, and those are easy connectors. So let me cut some new tubing and get that secured and start making some more water.
The tubing from the solenoid to the container just requires a new length of tubing. It's those connections, which are easy and convenient, but care needs to be taken to ensure a proper seal or seat. The two float switch connectors were marked to make sure that I would reattach them in the correct order.
And with everything secured, I even moved this power strip a little further over. Now it's time to plug back in the solenoid. And we're once again making water.
Next time you're near Long Beach, California, take the time to stop in at Age of Aquariums, 2642 Cherry Avenue, just off the 405 freeway near Signal Hill. Age of Aquariums carries a full line of dry goods, supplements, and exotic equipment. Age of Aquariums also carries a wide assortment of living corals, coral frags, as well as fresh and saltwater fish, ranging from the usual, the unusual, and the bizarre. Age of Aquariums is located at 2642 Cherry Avenue, Long Beach, California, near Signal Hill. Open 7 days a week. Call 562-438-6252 or visit ageofaquariums.biz.
Spectrapure manufactures the best filtration systems on the market, and they're one of the few manufacturers that actually make their own cartridges as well. If you're looking for a filtration system for your reef tank or fish tank, look no further and don't settle. Check out Spectrapure.com for more information. In addition to filtration systems, they also make some of the best dosing solutions on the market. The Liter Meter 3 can control up to 4 pumps, and you can program the amount of transfer, or the amount of fluid you want to transfer, with the push of a button, down to the milliliter. If you're looking for a dosing solution, check out Spectrapure.com. They're not only a manufacturer, they're an innovator, and they make some of the best equipment available.
Are you still tumbling biopellets? Tired of constantly replacing your GFO? Or trying to grow algae in your refugium? And you still have algae problems? Get real. Real filtration, that is. Algae scrubbers from Santa Monica Filtration will turn this into this by growing this weekly. 2 styles of scrubbers, the Hog and the Surf. Both are extremely easily installed and noticeably effective. You want results? Algae scrubbers are the answer. Visit santa-monica.cc.
So it's about a week later now. We've completely resolved the issues with the holes in the bottom of the containers. We used some more silicone. We were able to seal those. We've tested them. There is no further leakage, and I feel comfortable enough to proceed forward. So much so that over the course of the last week, I produced over 600 gallons of purified water, and I'm beginning to get quite comfortable and familiar with the Spectrapure RODI purification system. You can see up here we've got 272 of TDS coming on the inside, and on the outside we've got it all the way down to 6. So it's almost ultra pure water. So you can see here we've got 300 gallons of purified water. Scott's float switches have worked flawlessly a number of times over the course of the last week, because in addition to this 300 gallons, I've also made another 300 gallons of salt water over here previously. I had originally considered using a smaller water pump as the circulation between the two containers, but at the last minute decided to put the bigger pump on there. I'm glad I did, because the stronger pump is going to move that water much faster. This water pump will actually come on in 2 different ways. There's a timer over there on the wall that originally it was every 3 hours. I've now backed it off to every 6 hours. It comes on for about 30 minutes. So it's always in a continuous circulation kind of mode. The other thing I can do is turn it into the manual switch, which will run it continuously until I turn it off, and that I'll usually use just as I've added new salt into the system. Let me show you how strong it is. And you can see just how strong it is inside there, so it's really moving the water around, and if I allow that to run for an hour or so, there's a pretty good circulation or momentum inside there that'll continue on. So that helps dissolve any of the salts that might take a little bit longer than others. I've not yet had the opportunity to use the valve here that would send water out to the van because I haven't picked up the fitting for it yet, but I'm pretty confident that this pump would more than capably pump to my van just 20 feet away at the most. In addition, there's the valve on the back side that ultimately will be sending water to the reservoir over in the fish holding system, and that'll be real helpful with regards to water changes or even topping off. And so in addition to becoming familiar with making purified water and then transferring it from one container over to the second container to make salt water, I also need to become familiar with forecasting my schedule, or at least my needs. Previously, I would get 500 to 600 gallons of water delivered every 2 weeks. Now I have the luxury of making it over in any quantity I want, whether it be Scott's 30-gallon refill arrangement or the 200-gallon version of what the bag of salt comes in. Again, I just simply need to be able to forecast my needs and make that in advance. For example, tomorrow, 2 different customers will consume 70 gallons of water. On the next day, there's one customer that will take 100 gallons of water. Over the course of the next 3 days, there might be a handful of customers that will take collectively 100 gallons of water. So I need to be aware of that, make the appropriate amount of purified water, have the appropriate amount of salt water made in advance, and of course another thing is inventorying salt mix. And salt mix is an entirely different story and an entirely different episode maybe down the road. I want to stay on topic, and that is water purification. What we've employed is a new means of making salt water. We've started with a purification system that produces ultra pure water. We've set up a mixing system that allows us to move that purified water into a mixing vat, and with the addition of salt mix we can then make our salt water. The things I need to be aware of are going to be my needs in the future, so I need to make sure that I produce enough reverse osmosis or purified water, and at the same time produce enough salt water in advance, as well as having enough salt to make all that. Ultimately, the goal here was twofold. One, to try to produce a better quality water, and two, to try to create a more time-friendly arrangement for me. Whereas before, there was a little bit of pressure, mostly on myself, or put on by myself, to take minimum 500 gallons every 2 weeks. Granted, the company was willing to back off, but we came up with this alternative for making it ourselves, and that brings us to number 2. Would it be a better quality product, and would it be slightly less expensive? So again, there was a cost issue and a time management issue. I think we're going to achieve that because I do feel very comfortable in the quality of the water that we're producing now. I also will be very curious to see if in the long run it's a lesser expensive alternative. I do feel that it will. I'd like to take just a quick moment and thank the folks over at Spectrapure. They've been very knowledgeable and very helpful in setting up this system. You can visit their website at spectrapure.com. They've also got a toll-free 800 number and very knowledgeable people to talk with you. I'd also like to thank Scott for helping me set up the system. And so as we explore new ways of offering a better quality product to our service customers, as I've always said, keep moving forward.